What's up, everyone? Welcome to the video. We are here talking week 19 of the NFL season for DraftKings and FanDuel. Saturday edition. We got the playoffs and we got two pretty good games here to kick it off. We have the Seattle Seahawks taking on the San Francisco 49ers. And then my favorite game, we had the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Los Angeles Chargers in a game I think can be pretty back and forth. And honestly, I'm not sure who's going to win that one. I think it could go either way. I do lean the Chargers just because I trust Justin Herbert a little bit more, but that should be a fun game to watch. But anyway, if this is your first time here, what's up? My name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR and NFL DFS each and every single week on this channel. And in these videos specifically, what I like to do is go position by position with the player pool that I have interest in. Although with this being a 2-game slate, I'll pretty much just throw everybody on there. Then we'll build a line plays, progress through it, more so for a single entry tournament build. Then at the end, I'll run my optimizer to see who's popping the most as of right now with the projections ownership that I currently have set in place. And if you want access to that, link is down below in the description. And hey, if that all sounds fine, Dan, and to you, well, you can do one small thing in return. It's leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel if you are new, and feel free to leave a comment down below saying whatever you want to say. Be nice, be mean, I don't really care either way, but I would love to hear from you. And as always, we will start with the quarterback position. I do have to mention, if you want access to the sheets, the projections, optimizer, ownership, Discord community, all that fun stuff, link is down below in the description or the pinned comment. And I do cover other sports as well, including the NBA, each and every single day in a similar fashion. And NASCAR is coming up very soon, which I'm sure if you guys know me, I am very excited about. But anyway, let's get into the quarterbacks here. And we'll start up top with Justin Herbert, $6,600 on DK, 78 over on FanDuel. And really all these guys are really cheap. So no matter which stack you want to go with, you can afford it. There's like two expensive players on this slate, and it's CMC and it's Austin Eckler. But even then, they're in the 8K range. So we're not really breaking the bank on anybody this week, which makes this Saturday slate pretty fun. But for tournaments, that means there's going to be a lot of high-owned plays, and you have to find ways to try to differentiate yourself just because you can play whoever you want. So while that's fun, you have to keep in mind the insane ownership, and you got to find a way to get different in tournaments. Anyway, I like this game more than the 49ers-Seahawks game. It's got a 5-point higher over-under. The implied team total is not bad for both teams. It's only a 2.5-point spread compared to 9.5 for the 49ers and the Seahawks, and there's just an insane amount of stacking options on both these teams, and they're not that expensive. Like you have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, although Mike Williams might not play. He has not yet practiced this week, and it's Thursday. Due to his coach, just awful coaching decision. I'm not sure why he had these guys out there until just about the start of the fourth quarter. Herbert's out there. Allen had a great game. Mike Williams, they're all out there. And immediately this game versus Denver, risking injury, which we know a lot of these guys on this team can be a bit injury prone, especially Mike Williams. And what do you know? He gets carted off from the sideline to the locker room at some point, and he hasn't yet practiced this week. So if he's out, it's a bit of a hit to Herbert. But I feel like he hasn't had a healthy receiving course about all season long, and he's been fine. So I don't think it's going to be a big blow, but I would like for Mike Williams to play. It definitely helps him out. But that's going to be a wait-and-see situation. Sounds like it's going to be a game-time call. I know Keenan Allen said on, I believe, NFL Access that it sounds like he's gearing towards playing, but I think the only anybody knows that as of right now is Mike Williams, and he might not even know that yet. So it's kind of a guessing game there. But Herbert's been great this year, and it's a pretty good matchup versus the Jaguars. They're 30th DVA versus the pass and 25th versus fantasy quarterbacks. And on the flip side of this game, we have Trevor Lawrence hosting his first playoff game ever. Young career, but he's definitely looked pretty good in the second half of this season at home in Jacksonville. Only a 2.5-point dog, and they should be throwing the ball quite a bit. But overall, this is a good matchup versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Their defense is really bad versus the run, but I'm not too scared of it versus the pass either. And stacking options are extremely cheap with Christian Kirk, Evan Engram, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, and even ETN in the backfield. So very affordable. And this is a game that I am going to get a lot of exposure to. And these are my 1 and really 1A, 1B on this slate for quarterbacks. Then in the other game, we have Geno Smith and Brock Purdy. I prefer Purdy just because I like the 49ers offense better. I think there's going to be more scoring opportunities. And while he hasn't been sexy per se for DFS purposes, he's pretty much been at 15 to 20 points in every single game. He's thrown at least 2 touchdowns in every game he's played. Had a fine game versus Seattle. It's not like he's lighting up the scoreboard for DFS, but at $5,500, you don't really need too much. The reason why I'm not getting the too much Purdy or Geno is just because I can get Lawrence for $100, $200 more. I can get Justin Herbert for $1,000 more, and I'm not really hurting for cash on this slate, so it doesn't really make too much sense to go that route. Now, again, like I said, prefer Purdy, but I just rather get the Herbert or Lawrence. Plus, they're in the late game, so it'd be nice to have the late game hammer stacks. But if I had to rank these quarterbacks on the slate, it's probably going to be Herbert, Lawrence, Purdy, and Geno Smith for me. And moving over to our lineup, like I said, I am just a big fan of Herbert or Lawrence here. I am fine with going either route. I'm going to probably roll with Lawrence here. It's tough. I don't know if Mike Williams is playing. If Mike Williams is in, I might just roll the dice on Herbert. Not like I'm rolling the dice. He's going to be very popular, obviously. But I'm going to roll with Trevor Lawrence, save a couple of bucks. Maybe it'll allow me to get in a CMC or whatnot. But if I have the extra $1,000 at the end, I feel like it'll be pretty interchangeable for the most part. So you could just slide Herbert in, but let's roll with T-Law for now. And moving on to running backs, we have 2 studs up top. And then we kind of have the tier break to ETN. Then after that, it's a bit of a dumpster fire just because I don't like Kenneth Walker too much. Tough matchup versus San Francisco, 9.5-point dogs. There's not much appeal there. I will say, though, if you're in a pinch, Elijah Mitchell at $4,700, maybe the 49ers get up to a point where they can pull CMC because we know he's kind of fragile. They pull him out so he doesn't lose a leg at some point, something that the Chargers coach probably would not be smart enough to do. And Eli Mitchell comes in, gets a couple of goal line carries, and falls into the end zone at $4,700. That would not be bad at all. And we know Seattle is not good versus the running back position. But before we talk about those guys, let's talk CMC. Let's talk Austin Eckler. A little bit more fun to talk about. Definitely the 2 studs on the slate, the 2 most expensive players on the slate as well, but deservedly so. But it's really not going to be that hard to fit them in. Like we said, with quarterbacks, these guys are all cheap. And I'll tell you right now, the most expensive wide receiver, I believe, is Keenan Allen. And I don't even think he might be $7K flat either. It's not expensive at all, though. So we can afford these guys, and there's really not much separating them. If you are stacking this Chargers-Jaguars game, it might make more sense to roll with Austin Eckler just because he's going to be a big part of that game. And if you think it blows up, yeah, you're going to want pieces of him. And I feel like the upside is very similar to McCaffrey. They get similar usage. So I have no problem with both. Projection-wise, CMC does grade out a little bit better for me. And he did do well versus Seattle in their first outing as a 49er. And with Brock Purdy under center, he's had no problem dumping it off to CMC. And you kind of get 2 players in one with him. You get wide receiver 2 usage with RB1/RB2 usage as well. So you mix that together and you get one of the best fantasy running backs in the NFL. And the Seattle Seahawks allow the 3rd most points per game in the running back position. So if you can afford CMC, please play him. If you're playing cash games, I'd highly recommend getting him in. Eckler's kind of that tournament pivot if you can't afford both, but it shouldn't be too hard to fit in both. And he has very similar usage to CMC as well. Travis Etienne, $6,000. If you're playing cash games, kind of a lock in my opinion. I know they're dogs in this game, but he's playing at home. It's only 2.5 points, and the Chargers are just not good versus the run, allowing nearly 130 rushing yards per game on the season. I believe they're 29th DVA versus the run and allowing 27th points per game to the running back position, which was 6th if you subtract that from 32. So yeah, very good spot for ETN, and slightly using the passing game, which can boost his floor a little bit. I know he's a good pass catching back. We just got to get him some more work, some more dump offs. So hopefully Lawrence can do that. So I don't mind putting him and Lawrence together. I don't think it's the worst correlation play. After that, we have a bunch of backups, which I'm not really sure why you're rushing them on a slate like this. And moving back over to our lineup, I'm sorry about the black fuzzies behind me. Don't usually record at night, and this is just what happens. I don't know how to fix it. Anyway, we got running backs here. Filling in 2, like I said, love Travis Etienne. The price point is way too low, so we're going to plug him in. He does start in the late game, though, so if you do, for some reason, play like CMC and Kenneth Walker together, make sure you put him in the flex so you have some extra flexibility to fix your lineup if you have to make some swaps. But we're going to plug in ETN here for now because I'm just not sure who I'm going to have completely yet because we're going to move on to wide receivers next. And I'm also going to roll with CMC. I know I said I like Austin Eckler in this game stack. I would like to play both. If we can fit in Eckler in the flex spot, I would feel great about that. But overall, I do prefer CMC. The props are a little bit better. I believe his rushing prop's about 20 yards higher than Austin Eckler, and the receiving prop, it's also very similar. So I think at that point, I'm just going to take Christian McCaffrey, and I'm probably going to roll with the 49ers defense at some point anyway to get that correlation. So that's what we're going to roll with. We can make some swaps at the end if we need to, but Travis Etienne and CMC, pretty much my 2 favorite backs on the slate. And moving on to our pass catchers, I always try to make this as simple as possible. It all comes down to what quarterback am I using, who are my run back options, what are my stacking options, what game am I looking to stack. Yes, one-offs are perfectly fine, but on a slate like this, if I have Justin Herbert, I'm getting at least 2 pass catchers with them, and I want a run back option from that game, which would be a Jacksonville Jaguar, and that example goes for any quarterback on the slate. I'm not diving into one-on-one matchups, things like that. I think that's just way too nitty-gritty, and usually it's a bit of a waste of time. Now, if there's a complete lockdown corner like Sauce Gardner on the slate or something like that, yeah, I'll get a little bit worried, but I don't think we have to really worry about that too much here. Now, anyway, so we'll start up top with Keenan Allen. So if you're using Justin Herbert, he's going to be your top stacking option with him, especially if Mike Williams happens to be out. And actually, if I could sort this by team, that might make it just a little bit easier for us. So I guess we'll skip down here. So Keenan Allen, we have Mike Williams, Joshua Palmer. If Mike Williams is out, which is kind of trending in that direction, I'll put DeAndre Carter in the projections, and then he would be a fine value play. I forget his exact price point, but I know he is pretty cheap. But if Williams is indeed out, Palmer, I think he's a great play, $6,300. It's obviously a bump to Keenan Allen as well. And then obviously DeAndre Carter will get more playing time. Then on the flip side of this game, if you're using Trevor Lawrence or if you're using Justin Herbert, either run back option or just your main stacking options, you have Christian Kirk at 59, Zay Jones at 43, Marvin Jones at 34, and Jamal Agnew is free, but pretty much for good reason. Now, honestly, I kind of prefer Zay Jones over Christian Kirk because I'm saving $1,600, and on the season, Zay Jones gets pretty much similar targets as Christian Kirk. I feel like Kirk's a little bit safer, but 7.3 targets per game compared to 7.24 for Christian Kirk. It's very similar, and I'm getting a major discount. I feel like the floor is a little bit safer with Kirk, but Zay Jones has a very high ceiling. Both are fine plays. If you can play both, go for it, but I do prefer Zay Jones, and I think if you're playing cash games, he will be a little bit more popular just because of that price point. If you go down to the Seattle Seahawks, we have DK Metcalf at 62, Tyler Lockett at 6K flat. I'm assuming the Seahawks are going to throw the ball quite a bit in this game. Last time the Seahawks faced off versus the 49ers, Geno Smith threw it 44 times, and the ball is going to go somewhere, and it's mainly just these two guys. 8.1 targets per game for DK Metcalf, 6.8 for Tyler Lockett, although he's dealing with a leg issue. He's got like 12 nuts and bolts in his hand these days, so I'm just not expecting much from the Seahawks. I am pretty much fading them for the most part. If you are stacking the 49ers, yeah, Metcalf, Lockett are your main run back options, but it's just not really a team I'm looking to target. We have 4 teams on this slate, and one just has a much lower implied team total than the rest, and that's the Seahawks at 16.5, so it's pretty much a good fade spot for me. And then on the 49ers side, we have Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and Jennings. I am playing best ball on drafters for the playoffs, and I have a ton of Jennings. I think he's my 3rd highest owned player, which if you haven't played over there, check it out. Promo code CPEN, you get like $20 for free. So then I also get $20, so we're helping us both out. But very fun. I've been drafting all week, and it's a really good time. And I'm loading up on the 49ers because I do think they make the Super Bowl. But either way, I think Deebo is a pretty good play on the site at $5,700. He returned from injury recently, and he's also my highest owned player in best ball as well. Because, you get the wild card round, and he should play all 4 games because it is my prediction they go to the Super Bowl. But that price point's nice, and we know Kyle Shanahan can get him the ball in situations where he can succeed, whether it's on the ground or through the air or short passes to get him an open space. So that price point versus Seattle, I definitely have a lot of interest in Deebo, and I think the ownership will be very high as well. And moving back over to our lineup. So we have Trevor Lawrence, so we have to get a couple of Jags in here. So I'm for certain playing Zay Jones. Love the price point. Just think he's incredibly too cheap, especially compared to Christian Kirk. I think the price difference is a bit steep. I want to get Keenan Allen as my run back option. Now, I'm probably going to play Evan Ingram, so I don't technically have to get Christian Kirk because I'm going to get my 2 pass catchers in there. And if we take the assumption that Mike Williams is out, we could play Joshua Palmer. We could also look at DeAndre Carter. Only $3,600, but for right now, we're gonna leave that wide receiver 3 spot blank once we kind of talk more through it, and then we'll circle back and see what we got. Then the most exciting part of this video, tight ends and defenses. So we have 4 main starters here: Kittle, Ingram, Everett, and then Noah Fant, and then a couple of backups there who, hey, maybe they catch a pass, but they're not going to be in my lineups. And maybe sprinkles on 150, but either way, Kittle, he's going to be your tight end 1 here. Killed Seattle last time they faced off, and they have been pretty much the worst team in the league versus the tight end position this year. The problem is, though, I'm going to be very heavily invested in Herbert and Trevor Lawrence, and if that's the case, I'm going to be pairing them with Ingram and Everett, so I probably won't have as much exposure to Kittle as you may think, just because I'm trying to tie my lineups together. But if you have the money for Kittle, or if you're throwing the flex spot in some lineups, I have no problem with that. He's definitely the tight end 1. Ingram, if I'm using Lawrence, he's the obvious option there, and he gets plenty of work, actually averaging the most targets per game out of all these tight ends on this slate. Everett, if you got Herbert, for obvious reasons, don't think I really need to explain that. Noah Fant, like I said, not really a big fan of Seattle, but if you're looking for a cheap run back option in a 49er stack, and you don't want to waste it on a Metcalf or Lockett, I say waste just because of the price point. You could throw Fant in there, like in the flex spot, just as a cheapie, and hope he catches a touchdown or 2. It just, maybe, I don't know, garbage time, something like that. I don't really see it working out, but there's situations where it could in tournaments. Then the defenses, it's kind of be 49ers or bust for me. I just don't really see another defense I really want to play because I want to stack that Chargers-Jaguars game up, and I'm not playing the Seahawks defense, so it's like, why not take the 9.5 point favorite at home with the 16.25 implied team total against. So it's kind of tough to go any other way besides the 49ers. The problem is it's going to be a ton of ownership, and I hate to just eat such a high-owned defense, but if you're looking for leverage, maybe you roll with the Chargers and hope Trevor Lawrence's first playoff game. It's a little bit too big for him to make some mistakes, which we've seen him do in the past. He's not prone to it. He's not completely just not able to do that anymore. I know he's played well, but it can certainly happen. Go back to his old ways. So we'll see. He's a young quarterback, and maybe the bright lights in prime time Saturday night for the playoffs is a little bit too much for him. Playing at home does help him out a little bit, but it's probably going to be the 49ers and Chargers for me, and probably just going to be a really hefty amount of the 49ers. And moving back over to our lineup, so since we have Lawrence, let's plug in Evan Ingram in the tight end spot. Let's just grab the 49ers defense since we have CMC just to finish off those correlations. And as you can see, we have 2 spots left, and we have just under $5,400. So unfortunately, no Austin Eckler in this lineup, although again, like I said, we can make a pivot and we could potentially make that work. But let's see, for the sake of correlation, we're probably going to want, I would like Christian Kirk, but also wouldn't mind a Deebo Samuel in there just to get another 49er. But if you are just looking to stack it up, let's see if we can fit Christian Kirk. We'd have 4,800 left, which would leave you with guys like Eli Mitchell, Hasty, and I guess some of the tight ends, which does not feel too great. You do have Gerald Everett there at $3,800, which you're just leaving a lot of money on the table. So I wouldn't say it's really my favorite route to go. You could upgrade a guy like Zay Jones, or if you wanted to get away from Travis Etienne and just grab Austin Eckler, I'm sure you could find a way to make that work. Maybe you drop off of Christian Kirk a little bit. You grab one of these. Since we lost a Jag, we could add a Jag here with Marvin Jones. I don't think that'd be the worst idea in the world. Then with $5,200 left, it doesn't change too much for the sake of what player you could get. But there's several ways you can work around this. If you want to get away from CMC and then you plug in Travis Etienne, that's another way you can go. Now we have $7,700, even though we still have Marvin Jones in, which again still leaves you a good chunk of salary, which I think it's fine to leave money on the table on this slate. But if we do upgrade Marvin Jones, we put in a Deebo Samuel, that leaves you $5,400 left, and then we can grab Joshua Palmer, which honestly feels a little bit better. So you'd have Lawrence paired with Zay Jones and Evan Ingram, ran back with Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, and then also Joshua Palmer. That's the assumption with Mike Williams being out. And that's not a bad looking lineup. We still have the 49ers defense. I know we lost CMC, but they're not completely married together. It's just a nice correlation there. But don't just copy and paste this, guys. I am probably building 150 lineups, or at least 3, and I have no idea which one I'm going to use yet. This was just to see what fits as we talk through it, more so for an educational purpose. Please make your own lineups and use your own judgment. And like I said in the beginning, just went on the optimizer here to see who's popping the most. I did have it running while we were talking, so we don't have to wait. So let me pull up the builds tab and open up the players. And yeah, that's a lot of Zay Jones. That's a lot of CMC, lots of Ingram. So kind of similar players that we all talked about and guys that ended up making the lineup. Etienne, Deebo Samuel, Eckler, Trevor Lawrence was the most popular quarterback for me. And surprisingly, Purdy came up more than Justin Herbert, although it was only by 1%. And keep in mind, I still have Mike Williams in the projections, so that would bump up some other guys. I'm sure Joshua Palmer would bump up a lot, and a couple guys would be give or take as well. But not really too surprised there if you look at the teams that are used the most: Jacksonville, 49ers, Chargers, and then obviously Seattle here the least by a decent margin. And if you want access to this to build your own lineups, and please make the settings if you're 150. I have no settings right now. Just running it raw. You have to make sure you correlate your lineups up and set them up in your groups and whatnot so you can have decent lineups for tournaments, because right now these probably look awful for it. But with that being said, I'm gonna get out of here. Hope you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure you like on the video, subscribe to the channel on your way out if you're brand new. I wish you all the best of luck, and I will see you tomorrow for the Sunday Slate video.